Up where we left off on Friday. Just 1 second. If you would, write your names down on that. Page 1183. In your textbook, top of the page, this is Act 1, Scene 1, about line 23, I believe. Aegeus comes in, he's welcomed by Duke Theseus, and Theseus asks him how he's doing, and he says he's perturbed. And he says he is full of vexation with complaint against my daughter, okay? So, he has Hermia stand forth. Aegeus, daughter Hermia, okay? Hermia loves whom? Who does she want to marry? Lysander. Hermia loves Lysander. Supposedly, we'll do it this way. Demetrius loves Hermia. Lysander loves, gotta get these right, Hermia, and Helena loves Demetrius. Now, if you just look at that by itself and see everything's all out of kilter. Everything's all wrong with this picture, okay? So he comes in. And then he has, Aegeus tells Hermia stand forth, tells Demetrius stand forth. And then he goes on and explains, Demetrius has my consent to marry Hermia. I want him to marry Hermia. I want her to marry him. And then he tells Lysander to stand forth. He says, and my gracious Duke, this man hath bewitched the bosom of my child. Thou, Lysander, thou hast given her rhymes and interchanged love tokens with my child. Thou hast by moonlight at her window sung with feigning voice verses of feigning love and stolen the impression of her fantasy with bracelets of blah, blah, blah. So, how, according to Aegeus, has Lysander bewitched Hermia? Does he mean literally bewitched, put a spell on her? No. How has he won her heart? To use an old-fashioned phrase, he courted her. He took her out. He wrote poems for her. He sang songs from her bedroom window. All the Romeo and Juliet stuff, right? Which this play could easily become Romeo and Juliet, just like Romeo and Juliet could easily become A Midsummer Night's Dream, right? So, he's done all these things, and he says, 36, with cunning hast thou filched my daughter's heart. Filched, stolen, right? Turned her obedience, which is due to me, to stubborn harshness. And so he says, if she will not hear before your grace consent to marry with Demetrius, I beg the ancient privilege of Athens. What is the ancient privilege of Athens? As she is mine, okay, this is Athens like at the time of Oedipus. Oedipus the play, okay, or earlier. Women again, no standing, no vote, no authority, etc. I beg the ancient privilege of Athens, as she is mine, I may dispose of her. And he means dispose in all the meanings it has. Get rid of her, throw her away, do her in, etc. Which shall be, his disposition shall be, either to this gentleman, I'm going to marry her off to Demetrius, or she dies. The law says I can have her killed. Theseus. Notice Theseus doesn't say, whoa, that's a little harsh there, Aegeus. No, Theseus is the duke. He's the one in charge with enforcing the law. So he says, Hermia, what say you? Notice, he is giving her an opportunity for a defense. He doesn't have to. Be advised, fair maid, to you your father should be as a god. That is, you should listen to your father and you should follow his every will. One that composed your beauties, yea, and one to whom you are but as a form in wax, by him imprinted. Think of soft wax. You stick something with an image on it and it copies that image. She should be a perfect copy of her father's will, not of his face, not of his form, but of his will. All right? And therefore it's within his power to leave the figure, and you've got a gloss down there, to leave unaltered, or disfigure it. That is, wipe it clean. Kill her. Last sentence. Demetrius is a worthy gentleman. Why don't you want to marry Demetrius? She says, so is Lysander. Well, yeah, in himself he is. That is, Theseus agrees with her. You're right. Lysander is a worthy gentleman too, only except he lacks one thing: her father's voice and eyes. Wanting your father's voice, the other, Demetrius, must be held the worthier. I would, that is, I wished, I desired, my father looked but with my eyes. I wish my father would look at Lysander, she says, with my eyes. What does that mean? Louder? See him as she does. It kind of, think about that for a moment. Does she really want her father to look at Demetrius the way she does? She wants to marry Demetrius. What is probably one of the reasons why she wants to marry Demetrius? Sex. Does she really want her father to look at Demetrius that way? Shakespeare loves to do this kind of thing in his plays, to raise this kind of sexual tension. Sometimes, trying to think how to put this. Heterosexual, I don't really want to use heterosexual, homosexual, because that's not it. Approved within society, sexual tension, and unapproved within society, sexual. His society, and possibly, Greek society, sexual tension. Rather, your eyes must with his judgment look. What does he mean by judgment? She's looking at Lysander with what? With her mind? Heart. He's saying, you got to look at Demetrius with your father's judgment. Okay? And so she begs, I do entreat your grace, pardon me. That is, forgive me, Lord. I know not by what power I am made bold. Something is speaking through her. She is, in a sense, enthused. Anybody know what that word literally means? As in the word enthusiasm? The "in" means inside. Thus comes from the word theos, God. It means in Goded. Like a God is in me, forcing me, inspiring me. It's another inspired, to be breathed into, to speak. Okay? Nor how it may concern my modesty in such a presence, etc. So, she says, what's the worst that can happen if I refuse to wed Demetrius? And he says, well, okay, either to die the death, to die, or to abjure forever the society of men. Notice, he introduces an option that Aegeus didn't introduce. Aegeus said, marry Demetrius or die. Theseus says, marry Demetrius or die or become a nun. Okay? Or to abjure forever the society of men. Therefore, for fair Hermia, question your desires. He doesn't mean intellectual desires. He means romantic, erotic, sexual desires. Know of your youth, examine well your blood. You've got a little footnote, your passions. Whether if you yield not to your father's choice, if you don't give in to your father's demands, you can endure the livery, that is the clothing, the dress, the habit of a nun. I, to be in shady cloister mewed, to live a barren sister all your life, chanting faint hymns to the cold, fruitless moon. Why? Because she's not going to be a nun to Jesus, because Jesus isn't alive in Athens at the time of Theseus. He hasn't lived yet. This is 500 to 1000 BC. It's in the mythological kind of past. So who will she be a nun to? The goddess of the moon, Artemis, who is known for chastity. Okay? Forever virgin. Thrice blessed they that master so their blood to undergo such maiden pilgrimage. That is, pilgrimage, like going from one place to a holy site, okay? Maiden pilgrimage, to be forever a maiden in this journey on this earth. So, thrice blessed are they. St. Paul says, one of his letters, if you can handle it, you're more blessed if you remain a virgin, male and female, by the way, than if you can't. If you can't, get married, okay? So, he says, but earthlier happy, that is, down here where real flesh and blood people kind of live, is the rose distilled in that which, withering on the virgin thorn, grows, lives, and dies in single blessedness. The rose distilled, that is, the rose that is partaken of. To use an old term for a man taking a woman's virginity, to be deflowered. Okay? That's the image of the rose that's been opened up. So she says, so will I grow, so live, so die, my Lord. I will take that option. Ere before, I will yield my virgin patent up. Patent means the thing that belongs only to me. Like if you are issued a patent by the United States Patent Office, that means you've created something that nobody else has. It belongs solely to you. They can't copy it. Okay? I'm going to keep my virginity rather than lose it, give it, whatever, have it taken by him, she says. He said, no, you don't have to answer me now. Calm down. Tell you what, by the next new moon, what's happening on the next new moon? Anybody remember? Theseus and Hippolyta are going to be married. Who's Hippolyta? Queen of the Amazons, defenders of women. Today we would say women's rights, women's freedoms, women's everything. She's standing, she's on the stage at this point. She's standing back there, if I were directing this, she's standing back there and she's listening to her husband tell this young woman, late teens possibly, mid-teens possibly, that she either has to die, enter into forced marriage, or be celibate all the rest of her life. And she's sitting there going, probably has a sword somewhere, Just, hands maybe twitching a little. No, you don't have to tell me yet. You can tell me the day of our wedding. What is this kind of set up for the wedding day? Not going to be so great. And upon that day, either prepare to die for disobedience to your father's will, or else to wed Demetrius, or on Diana's altar to protest. Diana's another name for Artemis. Artemis, actually, take that back, might be the Roman version of Diana. Demetrius, relent, sweet Hermia. Lysander, yield thy crazed title to my certain right. Crazed, it's unreasoned, it's unreasonable. Okay? So he says, come on, marry me. What's wrong with me? Lysander, you have her father's love, Demetrius. Let me have Hermia's. Here's it again. There's a little bit of that sexual tension being played upon. Almost like he's saying, if her father wants you, let him take you, but let me have Hermia. Do you marry him? And he makes it explicit. Scornful Lysander. What Aegeus means by that is, shh, you shouldn't mention such things. True, he hath my love, and what is mine, my love shall render him. And she is mine, and I give all of my right to her unto Demetrius. So Lysander then addresses whom? He says, I am my lord. My lord may be Aegeus, it may be Theseus, or it can be both. I am what? I am as well derived as he. That is, I come from as good a family as does Demetrius. And probably what he means by that is an old family line. Okay? My love is more than his. And what he's saying there is, I really love Hermia. Demetrius doesn't. My fortunes every way is fairly ranked. I'm well off, if not with vantage. In fact, I would, if we were to open the bank books, Lysander's kind of saying, I bet I'm a little better off than Demetrius is. And, which is more than all these boasts can be, Hermia loves me. So, everything else being equal, Hermia loves me. She doesn't love him. Why should not I then prosecute my right? Demetrius, I'll vouch it to his head. That is, I will challenge him to a duel. Made love to Nadar's daughter Helena and won her soul. Doesn't mean he had sex with her. It means he wooed her. He courted her. He did all the things that Aegeus said Lysander did to win Hermia's heart. Okay? He said he wooed Helena, and she, sweet lady, devoutly dotes in idolatry upon this spotted and inconstant man. Spotted, tainted, sinful. He's got marks on him, not literally, figuratively. He's not, quote unquote, pure. Okay? Why? Because he already won Helena's heart. And did what? Dumped her. Okay? Theseus. Yeah, I've heard about that. That should send, chills down Demetrius' spine. I heard about that, and I meant to talk to him about that. He said, but, being overfull of self-affairs, that is, thinking about my dearest Hippolyta and our upcoming wedding, it slipped my mind. So he says, Demetrius, come with me. I want to talk with you. Could be in trouble. Aegeus, come with me. I'll overrule you for now. Okay? And he says, but you, Hermia, you got 4 days to make a decision. And then he says, line 120. Let me back up. For you, fair Hermia, look you arm yourself to fit your fancies to your father's will, or else the law of Athens yields you up, which by no means we may extenuate, that is, I cannot do what? I can't bend the laws of Athens to death or to a vow of single life. Come, my Hippolyta, what cheer, my love? Why the what cheer, my love? Cheer means one's face, one's aspect, the look on one's face. I think Shakespeare is giving kind of a stage direction there. Hippolyta should not look happy at this point. She has just heard her husband, future husband, say, on the day we're going to get married, you, young woman, must either marry a man you don't love, die, or become a virgin for life and a nun to the goddess of chastity and virginity. Any of those good options? Not really. What cheer, my love? And she's probably frowning at him as they leave. National Shakespeare Festival did a performance of this several years ago. My son was in it, which is the only reason why I remember it. And the woman who played Hippolyta, and the director must have told her to do this, the director had Hippolyta kind of storm off the stage before him. And Theseus is like, what cheer, my love? And he runs after her. Okay? I thought that was pretty well done. So everybody leaves but Lysander and Hermia. And they talk back and forth. I'm going to skip a little bit. And let's see here. Lysander says, well, Hermia says, line 140, oh, hell, to choose love by another's eyes. That is, to have to succumb to quote unquote love because my father says so. Lysander. Or if there were a sympathy in choice, and you've got a gloss, sympathy just means agreement. War, death, or sickness did lay siege to it, making it momentary as a sound, swift as a shadow, short as any dream. Second time the word dream is used in the play. Brief as the lightning, etc., etc. Okay. Hermia. If then true lovers have been ever crossed. What does she mean? Crossed. True lovers like this. That is, their love isn't running parallel to each other's, which is what love should do. They should each kind of mirror the other. It's crossed in the sense that it's going to, when it touches, it's going to ignite. Not in the good sense of passion, this is in the both destroyed sense. If then true lovers have been ever crossed, that is, she is saying, if it's always the case that true love doesn't work out. And you could go back through medieval literature, in the case of true love, as it's going to be said here, and I think in Romeo and Juliet, almost the exact same phrase is used, true love never did run smooth, okay? What? It stands as an edict in destiny. Then let us teach our trial patience. That is, if true love has always been hard, then that must be the case for everyone. So what must we do? We must let us teach our trial patience. Trial, our time of testing, our time of proving. She says, we must learn patience through this. Why? Because it is a customary cross. Customary there means it's commonplace. Everyone endures this. And notice, cross from this kind of crossing, but then it also has the biblical connotation of something to bear. as due to love as thoughts and dreams, and there's another instance of dreams and sighs, wishes and tears, poor fancies followers. A good persuasion. He means, that's a good argument. Nice rhetoric there. So he says, I have an aunt, a dowager, means she's a widow and she's loaded. Okay? She doesn't live in Athens. She lives in the wood outside Athens. Why is this significant? Because Athenian law doesn't reach into the wood. Just like London law did not reach south of the River Thames when Shakespeare and Company rebuilt the theater as the Globe in 1599 south of the River Thames. The mayor of London could not close that theater ever, not within his authority. So he says, and she loves me. My widowed aunt, I'm her only nephew, says we can go get married and we can live there. And the Duke can't touch us and your father can't touch us. So he says, meet me in the wood, a league from here, where I did thee once with Helena do observance on a morn of May. And she says, I swear to thee, I'll go. Okay? Helena comes in. And they talk back and forth. Let's see here. Helena says, because Hermia says, Godspeed, fair Helena. And you've got a footnote, line 180, fair. Fair complexioned, generally regarded by the Elizabethan as more beautiful than a dark complexion. No, not generally regarded. I don't have one. This might work. For the Elizabethans, this is the ideal of beauty for a woman. White. Not white like any of the women in here. This white. Powdered sugar white. And we have portraits of Queen Elizabeth with her face, entire face, powdered in white. Okay? So even a slight tan, not beautiful. Godspeed, fair Helena. We're being told what the actress who portrays Helena should look like. Bear in mind, in Shakespeare's day, who played all the roles of women? Men. Young men, late teens usually, at the very latest 20 or 21, or boys from about the age of 9 up. Okay? There were no women on the stage during Shakespeare's day. So, wither away. Call ye me fair, that fair again unsay. Why? Demetrius loves your fair. Yet Hermia, we're going to be told in another kind of bit of dialogue, Hermia is not fair. Hermia is dark complected, dark hair, and short. Helena is white and blonde and tall. Swimsuit model, not swimsuit model kind of a thing. Okay? So she goes on and talks about, Helena goes on and talks about Hermia's beauty in Demetrius's eyes. And she says, if only I could be like you. Hermia, I frown upon him, yet he loves me still. Oh, that your frowns would teach my smile such skill. In other words, if I could learn how your frowns make him desire you, then I would frown like you do. Okay? They go back and forth. So Hermia says, don't worry about it. From here forth, you will never see my face again. And she tells Helena what she and Lysander are planning to do. Okay? And Lysander adds a little bit to it. Lysander leaves. He bids Helena adieu. And Hermia leaves. And then Helena gets a soliloquy. What's a soliloquy? Anybody? one person on the stage, one character on the stage, and that character speaks out loud. When that character speaks, we're being told that individual's thoughts. Everything the character says, the character believes to be true or is true, all right? But it's important that it is one person on the stage, nobody else. I'm going to emphasize this when we get to Hamlet, because there's a speech in Hamlet that's often called one of the greatest soliloquies in the English language. It's not a soliloquy, because Hamlet is not alone on the stage. So, Helena does what? She starts to think about what they're plotting to do. And she says, through Athens, I am thought as fair as she. That is, throughout Athens, people think I am as fair as Helena. But Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all but he do know. He will not know, that is, he desires not to know what all but he does know. What's her point? He doesn't want to see me as beautiful. He doesn't wish to see me as beautiful. So what does he need? He needs to be taught. So she says, and as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes. Why is that an erring? Because earlier he made love through wooing to Helena, won her heart, and now he's turned. He's turned from what? From what he used to, willed to know. Okay? As he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities, things base and vile, holding no quantity, love can transpose to form and dignity. Okay? Things base and vile, ugly, low, common things, she says, holding no quantity, and you've got a gloss there to whatever that is, unsubstantial, unshapely, love can transpose to form and dignity. What does that mean? Look at the next line. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. Or, to put it in a more modern sense, love is where? Or where is beauty? Put it that way. In the eye of the beholder. You've all seen couples, for example. I can think of one, where one of the two people in the couple is not necessarily that attractive, and the other person is just drop dead handsome or gorgeous. Used to be a guy in one of the administrations, like either Trump's or Obama's, an accountant, nerdy, office management, budget guy. Kind of short, dark hair, puffy face, glasses. And his wife literally looked like she just walked out of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. I mean, she's like 3 inches taller, blonde, blue eyes, the whole 9 yards. Okay? Love can transpose to form and dignity. Form, beauty, dignity, worthy of being loved. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. And therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. Because Cupid does what? Cupid's blind, and he's got his arrow. Cupid doesn't go, I'm going to fall in love with her, and boom. Mm-mm. Cupid's like Stevie Wonder, at the bing, and the arrow goes wherever. Okay? Not being, demeaning or anything. So, she says, before Demetrius looked on Hermia's eyne, plural of eyes, he hailed down oaths that he was only mine. So, I'm going to tell Demetrius, he'll want to follow Hermia, I'll follow Demetrius. What is she thinking she's going to do? Somehow persuade him to see her as she ought to be seen? Okay. Then, Act 2, 250. Herein mean I to enrich my pain, to have his sight thither, back to me, and back again. In other words, to get him to see correctly. Because now he sees how. What's the title of the play? A Midsummer Night's Dream. Now he sees kind of like through a dream, or in a dream. He has a dream of love for Hermia. Not real. So she's going to wake him up. Okay? Act 1, Scene 2. We have our first instance of what are variously called the clowns, the rustics, or the rude mechanicals. Okay? I don't think clown is a proper term to call them for the simple reason that we have popular conceptions of clowns that they don't have red noses and big floppy shoes and stuff. Rustics kind of implies, rustic means what? Not cultured, not educated, okay? Rude mechanicals. Rude there doesn't mean they have bad manners. It means not cultured, not educated, okay? And mechanicals, they work with their hands. So, enter Quince the carpenter, Snug the joiner, another kind of woodworker. Not carpenter builds houses. Joiners build things like window frames and desks and chairs and things like that. Bottom the weaver, Flute the bellows mender, and Snout the tinker, and Starveling the tailor. Okay? By the way, people who call them rude mechanicals, that's a slam on craftsmanship. If you know anything about woodworking, you got to be smart. Because if you measure wrong, if you can't do fractions, you're not going to make, or being a tailor or any of these others. So, why are they all here? What's their purpose? What are they preparing to do? Remember Theseus' opening speech? Take that back, not quite opening, second or third little speech. He tells Philostrate, or Philostrate, however you want to pronounce his name, to go off and stir up the Athenian youth for revels and such, for our wedding solemnities, for the party after the wedding ceremony. That's what they're getting ready to do. They're going to put on a play. Okay? And we get an idea of what this play is going to look like. We're told a little bit about what it is. Line 9 on page 1189. Our play is the most lamentable comedy and most cruel death of Pyramus and Thisbe. Lamentable comedy. Comedy shouldn't be lamentable. They should be funny. Lamentable means it's something you're sorrowful over. Okay? Pyramus and Thisbe, ancient Greek myth. All right? About star-crossed lovers. Lovers whose families did not want them to marry. So we have Theseus and Hippolyta. All right? Oberon and Titania are going to be introduced next scene. And then we have these four, which are really this one. Gotta get them right. This one, okay? So two couples there that ought to be together. And then we're going to have this play about the marriage of Pyramus and Thisbe. And so we have Peter Quince, who's kind of the leader of the company, handing out parts. And we get introduced to all of these characters, but one kind of sticks out. Bottom. Bottom is a character that a lot of actors want to play. For the simple reason, you can go crazy with them. You just let your inner ham go all the way out on the stage. Okay? So, Peter Quince gives out the parts. He says, Bottom, you're set down for Pyramus. What is Pyramus? A lover or a tyrant? Oh, a lover that kills himself most gallant for love. He kills himself for love. that'll take some tears in the performing of it. In other words, I'll have to really cry. And if I do it, let the audience look to their eyes. I will move storms. I will be so that the women will be, puddles and such. And he goes on and quotes some lines, etc., etc. So Quince hands out other parts. Flute, here. You're going to play Thisbe. What's Thisbe? A wandering knight? It is the lady that Pyramus must love. Nay, faith, let me not play a woman. I have a beard coming. Meaning, he's starting to get a couple of whiskers. Flute is young. Okay? No, you're going to play him. You'll play it in a mask. And you may speak as small as you will. And that's exactly what Quince should do when he tells that line. Okay? Bottom. And I may hide my face. Let me play Thisbe too. What's this tell us about Bottom? One, he's an idiot. And two, he's a ham. Okay? Because their lamentable love is going to have one person here and one person here, and they're going to be in dialogue. How's he going to do that? Stand here and hold the mask behind, and then he turns over here, holds the mask up, and goes back over here. Okay? He said, no, you're Thisbe, you're Pyramus, okay? Other people get other parts. Bottom one comes in, he wants to play the lion also, etc. So, he says, learn your parts, and we're going to meet where? In the wood outside Athens to practice. Why meet there? So nobody can see them. They want their play to be a surprise. Act 2. Okay? Notice, a wood near Athens. Enter a fairy at one door and Robin Goodfellow Puck at another. Robin Goodfellow is another fairy. How do you know these are fairies? Usually when this is staged, it's by their costume, their dress. Okay? One of the greatest productions I've ever seen of this was at the Globe in 2002. My wife and I were there. And they used a small portion of the Globe company, the Globe actors, to portray humans and fairies within the play. So, for example, the guy who played Oberon also played Duke Theseus. Okay? The woman who played Titania also played Helena. Okay? And back and forth. And they wore the exact same costumes. They were actually striped pajamas. Blue and white stripe. Okay? When they were fairies, they had switches in their hands. When they were fairies, they hit a button and lights sewn in, like Christmas tree lights, sewn into the clothing would come on. So when they're fairies, they come out and they kind of glow almost because it was nighttime. I mean, they do have stage lighting and stuff, but it was pretty interesting. And then sometimes you'd have somebody speaking as a fairy and then just a couple minutes later as a human. Okay? So, Puck and this other fairy come in. Puck, by the way, not original to Shakespeare by any means. There are Pucks and Pooks, same thing, okay? In Slavic literatures, in Scandinavian literatures, in Indian literature, like subcontinent of India, not Native American, etc. So it's this old kind of trickster, almost like a poltergeist, if you want, okay? So Puck says, whither wander you? And the spirit says a bunch of stuff. The fairy says a bunch of stuff. And the fairy says, the queen is going to keep her revels here tonight. Is going to come here anon. Puck, line 17 or so. The king doth keep his revels here tonight. Take heed, the queen come not within his sight. Notice, they speak in verse. Okay? They're rhyming. The others speak in verse too. It's just blank verse, but this is rhyming verse. For Oberon is passing fell, that is angry, in wrath, because that she as her attendant hath a lovely boy stolen from an Indian king. She ne'er had so sweet a changeling. And we get introduced to this idea of a changeling. A changeling is when the fairies enter your home and take your child out of the crib and replace it with one of theirs. This is another old idea. It goes back at least as far as Anglo-Saxon England. It's a nice way to excuse why your child doesn't behave well. Well, not mine. You know, you have that line in one of the Avengers movies, somebody saying something about Loki, and Thor says, you know, he's adopted. Like, he's not literally my brother. Okay? So, Oberon would like this child to be his henchman. Titania's keeping it for himself. So, they are at loggerheads. They are not getting along. And the fairy says, tell me if I'm wrong, but aren't you Robin Goodfellow? Are not you he that frights the maidens of the villagery and does all this other stuff? And he says, yes, thou speakest right. Now, Puck is also one of the characters actors love to play. And that, again, is for a couple of reasons. He has some great lines. He has some of the most memorable lines in Shakespeare, but he also gets to be very active, or can be very active. The same production that my wife and I saw, if you remember the other day when I had the drawing kind of the globe, the stage is like this, you've got these big columns here that support a roof. Those columns, I mean, they're a good 2.5 feet diameter probably. Those columns have a lip on them at around, I'd say probably 4.5 feet. The lip is kind of like crown molding, so kind of is shaped like that, and then a flat spot on the top. And the guy who played Puck, little wiry guy, he's probably about 5'5", 5'6", had to have been a gymnast at some point, because he was going from standing like I am to jumping up feet on this thing at about 4.5 feet. Okay, and he would do that repeatedly. Again, he's a fairy, he's a sprite. He should be somewhat athletic like that. Okay? So, he talks about the stuff he likes to do to people, etc. And he says, but make room, fairy. Here comes Oberon. And we see Oberon come in, and then Titania. Ill met by moonlight, proud Titania. What? Jealous, Oberon? Fairy, skip hence. I have forsworn his bed and company. Notice which one she puts first. We're not sleeping together, and I don't even want to be in the same room or clearing with him. Okay? Now, one thing to bear in mind. Sis and great. So two things to keep in mind. In Shakespeare's day, there was a belief system, or they had a belief system, that essentially said things that happen in the quote-unquote supernatural spiritual world have correspondences here. That is, corresponding things happen between that world and this world. Another way of putting that is there are things that happen in the macro universe out beyond our world have ramifications here. That's the basis behind, for example, astrology. What planet you're born under, what star, what's ascending, descending, etc., can affect your lives down here. Okay? In this idea fall the fairies. Fairies are supernatural beings. Okay? And it's kind of related to this. These two ideas kind of mesh together. Think of them as railroad tracks. What happens to railroad tracks, if you stand in the middle of them and look down, if they don't bend, they eventually meet. Okay? They come together. Well, these two ideas kind of come together. This, the idea of the great chain of being, you've got God up here, and then after God, you have a huge chasm, and then everything down here is everything created. Right? Highest form of creation, seraphim and cherubim, highest angelic orders, down to whatever astrophysicists now say are the smallest building blocks of reality. Nuons and gluons and things like that. Okay? Within those, you've got classes. So, angelic realm, human realm, animal realm, plant, rock, mineral, etc., etc. Highest of the angelic orders, cherubim or seraphim, depending upon your source. Okay? Highest of the human orders, queen, down to, I don't know, slave. Highest of the animal, what's king of the beasts? Lion, what's its name? Leo, it means king. King of the birds, eagles, whatever, okay? All the way down to, I don't know, amoebas. Plants, I would say redwood trees, greatest trees on earth, down to moss, lichen, whatever, okay? Notice who's not in this. Between this and this, you have the fairy realm. And the fairy realm also has kings and queens, down to your slave, peons, peasants, cobweb, mustard seed, peas blossom, are all going to be names of fairies that we're going to see. Okay? Why do I just spend nearly 5 minutes? Because we're going to see that there is discord between the king and queen. That discord, if you think of this chain, this as a link of chains, or chain links, the discord represents a break. So what happens to everything below that? Falls apart. If you ever, did whiplash, like as a kid on ice skates or roller skates, you get a whole bunch of people, you all hold hands, you go around the rink, and then you kind of let go and everything scatters. That's what's happening. Because we're told there's this discord between the king and queen, what does it produce? Everything pretty much that Titania talks about in lines 81 and following. There are fogs, there are problems with human society, there are problems with the animal world, etc., etc. So, let me go back. Fairy skip hence, I have forsworn his bed and company, tarry, rash, wanton. And your gloss down there says, what for wanton? Headstrong creature. Yeah, that could be one meaning of it. It also means whore, slut. He's accusing his wife of being unfaithful. Am not I thy Lord? Then I must be thy lady. But I know when thou hast stolen away from fairyland and in the shape of Corin sat all day playing on the pipe. And she talks about Phillida and Corin. These are two names from what's called pastoral literature. Pastoral literature are stories set out in the countryside, farms, etc. Okay? Phillida is like the farmer's daughter, and Corin is like the farmer's hired hand. And the farmer's hired hand has the hots for the farmer's daughter. She is saying, I know when you leave fairyland, you know what? You go off into the human realm and you pretend to just be a common worker. Why? So you can, we'll use the terminology the play uses, and in the context the play uses, so that you can make love to her like Demetrius did to Helena. You will sing sweet love songs to naive young farmer women, okay? And then he turns the tables on her. How canst thou for shame, Titania, glance at my credit with Hippolyta. Because she goes on and also talks about how he favors Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. He says, when I know your love to Theseus. Don't be talking about me and Hippolyta when I know you and Theseus are. Okay. And he gives us some background about Theseus. And everything he says about Theseus, it's part of the myth of Theseus. Theseus, according to the myths, lies to women. Big surprise, right? A man lied to a woman to get in her bed. Theseus did that more than once. She says, these are the forgeries of jealousy. You're not really jealous. No, you're using this because of something else. You want my little Indian boy. Not going to get him. Okay? We'll stop there. We will pick up with line about 117 on Wednesday.